Alright, I'm shooting this video to help you all with Kant a little bit. I'm going to go over some of the study guide with you, just sort of walk you through reading him. He can be pretty tough. As far as Kant goes, this is probably the easiest of his writings in many ways, at least in my mind, but he's still pretty hard, right? So don't feel bad if you're reading Kant and you think, I have no idea what this guy is saying. That's just part of the game. So you need to read him more than once. Use the study guide as a set of questions that kind of help you to find what's most important as you're reading through. I'm going to explain some of the things in the study guide right now. It'll take a few minutes, maybe 10 to 15 minutes at the most, I hope. So Kant opens part one. What you don't have in your book is the preface, and the preface just explains the name of the title, the grounding for the categorical imperative, or grounding for the metaphysics of morals, sorry. And metaphysics of morals just means that what Kant is going to do is he's going to think about how we should act, how we should use our freedom, right? We all have freedom to do a wide variety of things. So ethics is the sort of explanation or rules, coming up with rules for how you should use your freedom. And what Kant argues in the preface is that he wants to come up with rules to tell people how they should act or how they should use their freedom according to reason, according to logic, not according to empirical observation. So he's not so worried about how people actually live. He's really worried about how people should live and trying to figure out how people should live reasonably or logically. So he begins then with a principle that he thinks, this basic assumption, that goodwill is the one thing that is good without exception. Now, in a strange kind of way, this could be a trick on Kant's part. A goodwill is good without exception, so is a good car, so is a good bank account or good money. You know, anything that you preface with good is going to be good without qualification or without exception, right? But what Kant means by goodwill is not a will that is good, so much as that he means the desire that things go well for others, right? The desire that other people have things going as they should for them. So involved in a goodwill, and we probably see this most around Christmas time when we start singing songs like Peace on Earth, Goodwill Toward Men. What we mean by that is we want other people. We want what's best for others. And we're willing, in fact, to sacrifice ourselves or overcome ourselves or not even consider ourselves in desiring good for others, right? So goodwill means something like hoping things go well for others. That's what Kant means by goodwill, and he would say this is always a good thing to have. Without exception, it is always good to want things to go well for others. In the back of his mind, I think, Kant believes that God has a goodwill. That what makes God God is that he has the supremely goodwill, that he simply wants what is best for other intelligent beings in the universe. And so then the question becomes, then why didn't God, or nature, he uses the word nature, but he means God, why didn't God give us a goodwill instinct? Right? Why did he give us reason to work out this notion of a goodwill rather than instinct? And the purpose, I guess, Kant sort of, let me back up a minute, Kant argues that a goodwill will not make you happy. The intention of getting a goodwill is not so that you will be happy. He thinks that you would be worthy of happiness if you had a goodwill, and that's much, much more valuable than just being happy. Being happy is kind of accidental. It requires a lot of things, and here I think he's responding to Aristotle. We haven't read him yet, so we'll bring this back up again maybe, if I remember to, when we read Aristotle. But he's saying that, look, happiness is accidental in many ways. It requires all sorts of things outside of your control. You can't do anything about whether you're happy, really. If there were rules or secrets for happiness, somebody would have figured it out in the thousands and thousands of years of reasonable people walking on the planet. Nobody has, because it's accidental in many ways. And so instead what Kant wants to argue is better than happiness is something you can control, which is being worthy of happiness. That is entirely within your control if you have a reasonable amount of control. And it's under your control insofar as you have reason, because reason is capable of bringing you to to a state of goodwill if you practice reason diligently enough. So for Kant, the key to gaining a goodwill is not following your instinct. It's not following your gut. It's following reason, right? Being reasonable. So then if we ask the question, well then why did God give us reason to make us worthy of happiness instead of giving us an instinct to be happy? And Kant's answer is because, clearly, nature or God didn't make us to be happy. That wasn't the point. If God had made mankind to be happy, he really screwed up. So instead, Kant says, it's not about actually being happy, it's about being worthy of happiness. And God, in order to make us worthy of happiness, gave us reason so that we could earn and create in ourselves a goodwill. Then we become worthy of happiness. So, the relationship between goodwill, reason, and happiness is that reason is there to help us develop a goodwill so that we can become worthy of happiness, right? So Kant recognizes that the more and more people learn and grow and understand intellectually and reasonably, sometimes the less and less happy they become. If you think about, in fact, reading about Peter Singer, the more that we learn about the suffering in the world around us, the more and more, if we have a truly goodwill, the more sad we would be about it, right? The less happy we could actually live our lives because we would be concerned about the well-being of others. That's what it means to have a goodwill, right? So the more and more that we become reasonable, the more and more that we develop a goodwill, the more and more we might find unhappiness in this life because it's not a perfect life, right? So Kant says that this even leads some people to a certain sort of misology, which is just hatred of reason, right? All right, I'm not going to deal with some of the other questions on the study guide. I'm going to jump down to duty. So Kant picks up the notion of duty because he wants to explain what it means to have a goodwill. But in order to explain what it means to have a goodwill, he has to pick up something that's close to a goodwill, but doesn't quite take us all the way. So duty is the closest thing Kant could think of that explains what a goodwill is. But duty is not a goodwill. Goodwill is just on the other side of duty. But by working through the notion of duty, Kant is going to teach us what it means to have a goodwill. So a duty is something like a have to, an obligation, right? You do your duty, that means it's something you must do. There's an obligation to it. And Kant recognizes that there are four cases of actions and duties. The first case doesn't teach us anything about a goodwill, and that's actions that are contrary to your duty. You just don't do your duty, right? A firefighter who refuses to help put out fires. A soldier who refuses to go into battle despite his orders. A police officer who refuses to arrest the bad guy. A student who refuses to do their homework or just doesn't do it. A parent who doesn't care for their infant children. Right? They're just not doing their duty, and they have nothing to teach us about a goodwill. So Kant says, look, there are actions that are contrary to duty. We're not going to talk about those much because they don't teach us anything about a goodwill. Second kind of actions are actions that are doing your duty, right? Actions that conform to duty, but without immediate inclination. This means that I'm doing my duty, but there's something other than what I want to be doing right now that's motivating me to do it. So I'll give you an example. A firefighter rushes into a building because he's thinking, I want to see the newspaper write me up as a hero. It's not that he wants to run into the fire and save people or put it out or whatever else his duty is. He doesn't want to be doing his duty right now. That's not his immediate inclination. But he's going to do his duty without immediate inclination because there's something else that he wants. To be a hero, to get a bonus, to become the police chief or the fire chief. He someday wants to become a political figure and he wants to have this heroic deed under his history or something, right? So all of those things are reasons why people would do their duty without immediate inclination, right? I give to the poor so that I can go to heaven, right? That's doing my duty, but without immediate inclination. It's not that I want to give to the poor, it's that I want to go to heaven, so I'm going to do my duty, but I'm doing it without immediate inclination. Okay, the third case then is doing my duty with immediate inclination. And this is when, like, I would give to the poor because I just feel bad for the poor, and this is what I want to do right now. I'm not worried about whether I'm going to go to heaven or any of that sort of stuff. I'm just thinking, oh, I feel bad for this poor person, let me give to them. right? It's the firefighter who's a pyromaniac, just loves to be in fire, wants to run into that burning building, right? Because that's what he wants to do right now. He just feels a desire to do it. The soldier who grew up always wanting to kill someone. Maybe they played lots of video games, and so this young soldier is like, I just can't wait to kill somebody. They go into battle, the sergeant says, fire when you're ready, and they think this is the best day ever, right? I want to kill someone. Oh, it's so awesome. And they, it's what they want to do. It happens to be their duty, but they want to do it too. So those are cases of action that are in accord with duty, with immediate inclination. All of those have no true moral worth. When we do our duty with immediate inclination or without immediate inclination, and something else is motivating us, in those two cases, we don't have true moral worth in our action. The reason is multiple. There are reasons, I should say. First of all, you can't count on someone who's doing their duty with immediate inclination. Case number 3. Say I wake up one morning and I feel bad for the poor and I have soft heart. But later on that afternoon, I get dumped by my girlfriend or divorced. My wife tells me she wants to get a divorce. I get fired from my job. Somebody kicks me. And I'm just grouchy. Maybe I'm even just hungry. And I see a poor person and I'm so occupied with my own troubles that I hate them, or I don't like them, or I'm uninclined to feeling bad for them. Well, then I probably won't continue to do my duty unless I feel like it. Equally so, if I only do my duty because I happen to feel like it, I was born with a soft heart, well, I don't get credit for that, right? I didn't earn it. I just was born that way. It's not my fault, right? But for an action to have true moral worth, it needs to be my fault. I need to choose to do it. And if I just do it because I feel like it, because it's my immediate inclination, well, then I'm not choosing to do it. I'm just doing it by default, right? Now, in the second case, where we do our duty but without immediate inclination, the best way to think of that is, I try to keep the commandments so that I can go to heaven. Well, then I'm not keeping the commandments because I'm convinced that the commandments are the best way for me to live life, and I'm choosing to keep them. I'm doing it because I got bribed, or I'm making a good business decision, right? I'm trading what I want now for what I really want later. That's just doing good business, Kant would say, perhaps. That's not choosing to be moral, right? True moral worth means you do the act because it's the right thing to do, not because something is coming back for me, right? Or because I was bribed to do it. Now, under this view, that would make God the ultimate briber, right? He just sits up there in heaven and says, oh, these people need to be bribed to do what's right. Well, if you need to be bribed to do what's right, then your actions don't have true moral worth, right? And that's case number 2. Case number 3 is where you just happen to feel like it and you didn't choose it yourself. You were just born this way, or it's your immediate inclination. And that also doesn't have true moral worth. So the fourth case, this is where we get true moral worth, are actions that are done for the sake of duty. Actions that are in accord with duty and for the sake of duty. Those have true moral worth. In other words, you do the right thing because you're convinced that it's the right thing to do. It's kind of a circle. I do what's right because it's right. But for Kant, those have true moral worth because you choose them. Now, how do you choose, or how do you know what your duty is? How do you know what the right thing to do is? That's where reason comes into play. You use reason to help you determine your duty. Now, Kant says 3 principles come out of this analysis of actions and duties. The first is that the action itself doesn't have moral worth, but the motive for your action, right? Actually, sorry, the first one is that in order for an action to have true moral worth, it must be done for duty's sake. Only case number 4 gives you true moral worth. The second principle is that the moral worth is not in the action. It's in the motive for the action. It's the reason why you're doing it. The only reason that has true moral worth is because it's the right thing to do, right? That's the motive, and it has to be the motive. But the motive contains the moral worth, not the act itself. And then the third principle that comes is the motive must contain respect for the notion of obligation or law, right? Respect for the law has to be a part of the motive for your action. So what Kant means by this is that in order for an action to have true moral worth, I have to choose to do it because it's the right thing, and that it being the right thing fully and completely obligates me or commits me to doing the act. And it is my respect for the sense of obligation that motivates me. All right, I'm going to finish up with that. This takes you right up to close to the notion of the categorical imperative. I'll probably post another video for you in a little bit to help you through the categorical imperative. All right, bye.